and in the next few minutes, you will see footage that baffles military controllers, makes pilots forget their instruments, and breaks the familiar laws of physics. Watch until the very end. The final episode will answer whether the ocean really hides an entrance to an extraterrestrial haven, or will unveil a far more frightening secret. In the airspace of Pakistan, the crew of a small aircraft suddenly spotted a dazzling white sphere. At first, the pilots took it for the moon, but looking closer, they realized this was no heavenly body. The object skimmed rapidly across the sky, changing direction in ways that made its path impossible to predict. Very, very good. That is definitely not a drone, they joked, though unmistakable unease colored their voices. Almost at the same time, but already above the United States, during Fleet Week demonstration flights, a glowing disc flashed like lightning between jet planes. Had it not been for the video cameras, no one would have noticed how fast it was. What craft can slice through a formation of combat fighters as a needle through cloth? Is it technology from afar whose speed is still beyond us? Let us hope, whispered eyewitnesses, that such guests do not arrive with ill intent. The year 2020, Mexico. At the foot of the famous volcano Popocatépetl, 24-hour surveillance cameras captured a white cylindrical torpedo literally diving into the crater. People were stuck at home because of the pandemic and did not see it with their own eyes, but the recording flew around the net. Why would anyone plunge into molten lava? Some suggested an attempt to trigger an eruption, others, a covert operation of unknown forces. And what do you think? Whose ship can withstand the melting of solid rock? Let us move from the realm of the inexplicable to the subtleties of optics. A passenger noticed another airliner outside his window, seemingly frozen in midair. The illusion was called parallax. Objects at different distances move with different angular speeds, and the nearer one appears motionless. It is like when a train starts and you imagine the platform is moving. But UFOs, defying the laws of physics, put on quite other marvels. And we shall return to their strange maneuvers. 10 years of searching and still no trace. The Boeing 777 that took off from Kuala Lumpur for Beijing in 2014 vanished as though erased by an eraser. Rumor has it that before disappearing, the plane was surrounded by dozens of hovering spheres, like a swarm of bees. In one video, the airliner seems to keep its course until a flash turns it into a cloud and it is gone. Fantastic. Yet every new hypothesis only heightens the icy dread of the unknown. Imagine a strange, cigar-shaped hull blinks above your house. First rule, reach for the camera, make sure your phone has enough memory. One blink, and the object will be gone, leaving you without proof. The next witness could be you, so keep your smartphone ready. Who knows, maybe the alien B-roll is already buffered, only rec remains to be pressed. Twilight on the coast, a yacht rocks offshore, and suddenly an entire cluster of tiny lights ignites in the sky. They hang motionless, as if seeking a parking spot in the clouds, the lights muted, no flares, no signal rockets. A sailor eyewitness compared the scene to a garland hung on emptiness. What hovered in the deserted sky is anyone's guess. Passengers on a transatlantic flight had barely caught their breath after dinner when the windows were lit by a blinding discharge. Some panicked, deciding an aggressive alien had emerged from hyperspace. The rocket launch version crumbled. Cosmodromes lie far from main air routes. Perhaps we witnessed the launch of a craft ready for interstellar travel. The mysterious flash remained unexplained, leaving us wondering what had flashed by. Picture this. You are flying a passenger jet, instruments humming steadily, when suddenly a sparkling, fiery trail streaks past the cockpit. The pilot freezes instinctively, The object shoots so fast that radar barely scratches a mark. Then, like a screwdriver's pointer, a sharp climb and disappearance. "What was that?" crew members repeated. "Do aliens have flight plans scheduled to the minute too?" Talking it over, they noted, the maneuver looked less like emergency evasion than a hurried jump back to a home station. Speed? Beyond the usual calculations of earthly engines. That same summer in New Jersey, a civilian smartphone captured a perfectly classic pancake with a bright core. It hung over the roadway, like a sudden floodlight scanning the asphalt. People beneath glanced nervously. "Will it lift a couple of cars into the air?" Suddenly, the light inside the craft went black, as if someone clicked a switch, and the saucer seemed to retract into its own shadow. The video cuts at the most crucial moment, as if on purpose. But those few seconds were enough for social networks to howl with conspiracy theories. If anyone doubted that clean UFO footage exists, the Turkish Chronicle of 2008 is direct proof. Early morning walkers raised cameras and caught a huge hull where windows were clearly visible. At high magnification, one can even discern interior light, as though the cabin of a megaliner. Weeks earlier, Florida greeted sunset with an entire squadron of similar lamps. The shooters swore, no editing. But if the footage is genuine, why did news feeds not erupt in alarm? Perhaps humanity finds it easier to doubt than to admit a visit. Over the Russian hinterland, witnesses saw a strange construction, as if an unfinished frame hovering in the sky. Seconds later, smoke billowed from it, and the body began to unfold sideways like a metal flower. Some swear the object was shot down, others, a malfunction of an alien machine beginning an emergency, discard and spread. Every frame is a magnet for hypotheses. The structure expanded too oddly, then dissolved in cloud gaps, like valves slipping into another dimension. 2022, the capital of Pakistan. A dark mass, like a huge truffle, hung at a height unreachable for household drones and remained still for 13 minutes. Zoom lenses revealed angular pyramid contours. "That's definitely not a drone," one eyewitness shouted, and the crowd agreed. Only the mass attention made the object dissolve, not falling but seeming to erase pixel by pixel. Again, reconnaissance tech or visitors from beyond the solar system? The same mystery, only under a different sky. 10 years ago, Ukrainian Krivoy Rog observed a silent silver rod sliding along the clouds. The recording preserved the steadiness of its course. No rocking, no wind buffeting, so the light aircraft banner theory falls. Optimists said, well, it could have been advertising, but the skin looked seamless, solid metal, without a single joint. Like many other meetings with the unknown, it was brief yet gripping. 3 minutes, and the cylinder headed for the horizon without saying farewell. Over a Russian factory complex, a dark cigar with hints of bays and flaps hung. Workers below froze. The airspace is strictly controlled, and a foreign state's reconnaissance drone would hardly slip past air defense. The craft seemed to scan the industrial site, then in one motion melted into gray haze. It left as quietly as it came, witnesses said, staring at the empty sky. If it is a spy, it is far too advanced. If an alien, industrial tourism has reached a new level. February 2024, the city of Lucca lay under evening clouds when an elongated, perfectly smooth cigar hung in the heavens. One lucky resident managed to start his camera, and now the clip has spread worldwide. Some swear it is a thin staging. Others hear the whisper of intelligence services, an experimental spy device. But the hypothesis of a visit from neighbors sounds more convincing. The hull held so steady, as if scoffing at gravity and wind. A similar cigar had hovered above the plant, but the Italian version seems even more elegant, as though someone turned it on a lathe, using technologies Earth simply lacks. We move to another hemispheric theater. New Zealand is famous for its volcanoes and green slopes, but viewers got a bonus. A dark, matte obelisk hovered above the hills, keeping perfect balance. Someone fleetingly thought of a top-secret UAV, but the flying column neither hummed nor swayed. Each of its moves seemed deliberate, as though a trajectory was drawn by artificial intelligence of an entirely different level. The footage ended as abruptly as the object appeared. Was it a leak of military trials, or a device of a wholly other civilization? The question remains open. Two photographs, as if torn from a secret dossier. A huge disc-shaped saucer hovers above the ocean and, noticing an observer, plunges sharply under the water without splash or steam. Some experts whisper, extraterrestrials? Others see a test of something big. Which version will you choose? Write your opinion. The most interesting guesses will make it into the next episode. In China, an eyewitness noticed a gigantic ring burning evenly above the city. It did not move, like a spotlight on the celestial stage. Theorists flitted, meteorology, advertising blimp. But the ground gave no confirmations. The shape, too closely, resembled the lower outline of a colossal ship that had made a pre-landing pause. As soon as local services began launching drones, the halo turned its brightness to zero and disappeared. And again. In an unnamed suburb, a man looked out his window and breathlessly studied a pointed triangle sticking from a cloud mass, like a shark fin from foam. The object never quivered, showing it was no atmospheric phenomenon. Similar fins have been recorded worldwide, but here the angle was perfect. The episode made one think, if only the tip is visible, what colossal machine is the cloud layer hiding below? An Italian described how two aluminum discs, folded together, glided slowly over a forest. They laughed him off. But a decade later, another eyewitness filmed an identical object, now clearer. The saucer dives behind trees, flashes between branches, as if playing hide-and-seek. It disappears cinematically too, accelerating sharply and dissolving into the overcast sky. Editor or reel? Frames were dissected, no signs of montage found. We shift to 2013. A trio of lights arranged themselves in strict order beneath the wing of a passenger jet. The dance of light looked too organized for ball lightning, and the flight height excluded cheap drones. The offered glare in the window version quickly collapsed. The lights moved synchronously against cloud background, not reflecting from the cabin. So the old video lives on as a quiet sensation. One need only look closely. Over placid English skies, a stretched silver cigar suddenly flashed. Instead of normal flight, it truly teleported. It appeared instantly in a new spot, as if hopping invisible squares on a chessboard. After each jump, a cold, bluish afterglow rippled around the hull, as though the air itself failed to adjust to the new guest. Silent leap, short pause, another leap, 3 times in all, until the object vanished high in the clouds. Witnesses describe the feeling of watching a future movie trailer. Familiar physics simply switched off before their eyes. The Andalusian midday sun scorches the air when an ideally even cylinder, a true skyscraper, appears against the blue. It hangs motionless, like a giant pendulum on pause, then begins a slow glide downward. With each second, it becomes clear that the surface consists of neat sections gleaming like polished steel. Uttering no whisper, the cigar gently loses altitude, then stops, and suddenly the frame cuts off, as though someone pressed stop the instant the riddle neared its resolution. A chance viewer can only recall the incredible sharpness of lines and the sense that before him was a perfect mechanism decades ahead of terrestrial aviation. The colors of Hungarian spring reflect in the Danube when a mirror-bright cylinder, like a dim, lightning-swift train, appears in the sky. It hovers only briefly. Almost at once, it darts sideways and banks at a right angle. Something no jet plane could do. At that instant, the shiny hull seems to melt into mirrored shimmer, leaving behind a smooth and absolutely silent ribbon of air. Eyewitnesses liken the event to a magician's trick. While everyone tries to spot the sleight of hand, the object has already crossed the limit of visibility, opening the secret of motion without inertia. An international flight crosses the Atlantic when a silver disc flashes alongside. It leisurely licks the airliner's fuselage, first skirts the left wing, then, like a curious bird, glides beneath the belly and appears on the right. This happens at an altitude where even slight turbulence can shake a whole plane, yet the saucer holds so steady as if floating in vacuum. A few seconds of spectacle, and it veers away, melting in the sun's glare. The pilots later said they felt as though an older brother with unmatched technology was watching their machine. High above the prairies, an immaculate white cube suddenly appears, tiny yet eye-catching. It glides beside a passenger jet as if matching speed, then accelerates sharply, whirling upward until it becomes a speck in the vast sky. No wings, no nacelles, no wake, only hypnotic geometry designed to shatter the customary worldview with a quick flash. The cube left open the main question: what force can propel a compact object faster than roaring jet engines and still keep the heavens silent? A routine daytime flight, a straight horizon line, and suddenly, just above the airliner appears a structure resembling two fused cones. The object seems to glide along an invisible rail, no jerks, no wind toss. Then it slowly rolls around its axis, as if demonstrating unearthly symmetry. And exactly at that moment, a thin ring of fire flickers at the center, like a shimmering force diaphragm. It seems another moment, and the cones will part. Yet, they merely drift upward, as though climbing a fresh flight level, carrying away the intrigue of a possible timetable for alien airlines. The plane has barely lifted off snowy Denver when something like a translucent polyethylene sack surfaces nearby, yet it suddenly bends against the wind, folds in half, then unfolds into a perfect reflective sheet. All this in a few seconds without the slightest crease. Transformation again. The sheet turns into a thin ribbon strand and, flashing, vanishes in the high blue sky. Passengers, amazed, remark that the film obeys its own aerodynamics, unlike the usual laws where form rigidly dictates motion. At cloud level beside a cargo jet, a shiny disc appears, so close one can see the airline logo reflected on its surface. It leisurely slides along the wing, as if studying every rivet, and only after a full inspection gently moves away. In that moment, a ripple sweeps the sky as though an invisible hand muted the ether, and the saucer dissolves a few hundred meters off. The pilots admit, "We felt as if someone signaled, 'You are under observation, but there is no need to panic.'" A dark shoreline, a helicopter on night patrol. Suddenly, a blazing orange sphere bursts from the depths of the sky and flies just above the rotors. It does not simply streak fast. It changes direction so sharply it seems to leap across its own path. At every turn, the sphere leaves a thin, sparkling filament, and within a second, it is tens of kilometers from the starting point. No terrestrial engine could withstand such a maneuver, let alone such heat, which seemed to sheet over the dark sea and illuminate the waves. Spring quarantine emptied the highways when a pale cylinder drove leisurely along the road, like a blimp without balloons. It held the level of a high-rise and moved parallel to cars, as if escorting a column of vehicles along the deserted motorway. The instant a patrol police cruiser switched on its lights, the cylinder instantly gained speed, turning into a thin line in the daytime sky. No boom, no sonic barrier, no trail. It was as if to remind us, Even when the entire planet pauses its race, someone else keeps to their roots, sweeping aside human limits with a light burst of acceleration. Have you seen anything similar? Tell us in the comments. Every testimony brings us closer to the solution, and there are still more stories ahead, so hit subscribe, leave a like, and stay tuned. The most intriguing is only beginning.